specific. So the description of God in other religions is non-specific. It's general, like if I say color. So color is such an abstract thing that even if I tell you, paint this wall a color, in fact, you can't do that. Because color doesn't exist. Blue exists, red exists, yellow exists. Color it's not anything. It's just an abstract idea, a word we have to indicate all the other colors, but we're not being specific. Like the word fruit. Can you eat fruit? No, nobody can eat fruit. You can eat a mango, you can eat an orange, you can eat an apple, but nobody can eat fruit. Fruit is not a thing. It's just an abstract idea that kind of encompasses the whole thing. It's non-specific. So the description of God in other religions is very general. Just there is a God. Even take the word God that we use in English in Christianity to describe that supreme power, God. What does it mean? It's just a given word. It actually comes from, it grew out of other religions. It comes actually from German. It means like a luminous being. Now, that is not a specific description or definition of God. God doesn't really mean anything. It just, when we hear the word God, we know, okay, some supreme power. That's it. What does God look like? We don't know. What's his personality? What are his virtues? What kind of things does he do? We don't have all those details anywhere except in Hinduism. In fact, there's no description of what God looks like except in Hinduism. Remember, I told you that pratyaksh praman means seeing with your own eyes. So if it's possible to see God, it means God must look like something, right? You can't see God and say, what does he look like? I don't know, he doesn't look like anything. If you see God, he looks like something. So what does he look like? Nobody knows, except Vedas, Gita, Puranas, Ramayana, Mahabharata. In our scriptures of Sanatan Dharma, we have a description of what God looks like. So it means the description of God in Hinduism is not contradictory to the description of God in other religions. It's just that it's much more specific. Sometimes people ask, why? See, in other religions it's so simple. It's so simple because it's so vague and general. There's just that much information. So what is God? God is the supreme being, the creator of this universe. He gives us the consequence of our karmas. That's it. Okay, it's correct, but that's not the end of the definition of God. The definition of God goes far beyond that. So in Hinduism we have the specifics, like instead of just saying fruit, we're describing this fruit is a mango. It can also be an orange. It can also be an apple. It can also be a banana. In other words, one single God can have many different forms. It's not many gods, it's one single God who has unlimited powers, who can appear in these various forms. So let me give you an example of how simple the description is in Hinduism and how elegant it is and how it goes into so much more depth. Just because it's simple doesn't mean it's superficial. It's a very deep, very detailed explanation. I'll take one verse by Vedavyas from the Bhagavatam. Vadanti tat tattva vidas tattvam yajnanam advayam brahmeti paramatmeti bhagavan iti shabdyate. A beautiful description of God. First of all, he refers to that supreme power as advaya jnana tattva. Stay with me here for a minute. I'm going to get technical because I want to show you how beautiful this description of God is. It's a highly technical description. Advaya Jnana Tattva. First it's explaining what does it mean when we say God is supreme? So Advaya means not two, one. God is only one. Jnana, just like we say Sat Chit Anand. Sat meaning eternally existing. Chit meaning God is alive, He has divine mind, and He has unlimited knowledge. And Anand, God is the form of divine bliss. It's a simple definition of God, which is all included in this word Gyan. By Gyan, he's indicating Sat Chit Anand. Gyan means Chit, divine mind. So Sat and Chit and Anand are all within each other. So you can Sat, Chit, Anand. So Sat is within Chit, Sat and Chit are within Anand. So just by saying Chit, it means Sat Chit Anand. So saying Gyan, he's saying Sat Chit Anand. God is Sat Chidanand Brahm. And He is Advaya, He's only one. So that Advaya Jnana Tattva. Tattva means a substantially existing thing. He really exists. He's absolutely supreme, which means everything other than Him that exists is not separate from Him, because it all exists dependent on Him. So all the souls get their life from God. They are all dependent on Him. This Maya needs God to activate it and keep it functioning. So Maya is also dependent on God. So even Maya and the souls, although they are separate existences, they are not separate from God because they are wholly dependent upon Him. Therefore, He is the Advaya Jnana Tattva. All of this is condensed into this verse. And that Advaya Jnana Tattva, Vadanti, has been described by great saints who have attained Him to be three. Not to be three, that because He's Advaya, how can He be three? No, it means that one single God appears in three forms eternally, three main forms. And He names them Brahm, Paramatma, and Bhagwan. Brahm, formless God. Paramatma, Almighty God. And Bhagwan, the loving form of God. How does one single God appear in three forms? Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahm. Mundaka Upanishad says God has unlimited powers. Uncountable powers. Parasya Shaktir Vividhaiva Shruyate. Shvetashvatra Upanishad says His powers are numberless, limitless. So because He has unlimited divine powers, depending which power is being manifested outwardly, He'll appear in a certain form. So those forms are being categorized in three right now. Brahm, Paramatma, Bhagwan. If all of God's powers, although they're there because you can't get rid of the powers, if all of His unlimited powers are dormant, so He's called Avyakta Shaktik Brahm. Avyakt, not manifested. They're there, but they're not manifested. Just enough to maintain His existence, you can say. Just that much power is manifested. Then, how is God? He's Avyakt. He's formless. He still exists, but He's formless. So that's one form of God, is formless God. Brahm, we say. So that Brahm is like a sleeping person, you can say. That sleeping person may be a world champion weightlifter, but while he's asleep, can you call him strong? No. He may have the highest IQ in the nation, but while he's asleep, is he intelligent? No. All of his powers are dormant. So that form of God has no form, no name. Brahm is not His name. It's just a word we use to describe Him. No form, no name, no actions. So it's not that formless God who creates the universe. It's not that formless God who keeps track of all the karmas of all the souls. It's not that formless God who knows everything, because his intellect is dormant. All his powers are dormant. That's formless God, Brahman. Now, if some of those powers are active, not all, but some, then Vedavyas is referring to him as Paramatma. This means Almighty God. Paramatma has name, form, virtues, means gunas, and dham, abode. Form, what is the form of Almighty God? 3 main forms and many affiliated forms. 3 main forms: Vishnu, Shiva, Durga. So God, when his almighty power is activated, or manifested, you can say, it's outwardly manifested, he has a form. That form is an eternal divine form. So saints who have attained Almighty God, they either attain Vishnu or Shiva or Durga. They could also attain one of their affiliated powers. Like affiliated with Durga is Kali. Affiliated with Shiva is Ganesh, Kartikeya. Affiliated with Vishnu is Lakshmi, Saraswati. There are many almighty forms of God, but they're all affiliated with either Vishnu, Shiva, or Durga. Therefore, we say there are 3 main almighty forms of God. So we have formless God, 3 main almighty forms, and these almighty forms are not separate gods. It's one single God who is formless, if all of his powers are, avyakt, who has the personal form of Vishnu or Shiva or Durga or any other almighty form, but it's still the same God. And all of these forms exist simultaneously. He's not switching from one to the other, from moment to moment. He exists in all of these forms simultaneously. And all of them are omnipresent simultaneously. Remember I told you yesterday that God does not conform to the same laws of material physics that we are bound by? Imagine, God has uncountable forms. He exists in all of those forms simultaneously, and he's omnipresent in all of those forms simultaneously. Don't try to imagine it. It's beyond material intellect. If you could imagine it, it would mean you had grasped God with your material intellect, which we learned yesterday is impossible. Yet it's a fact that God is omnipresent in all of his forms. So these almighty forms have name, form, virtues, meaning beauty, divine beauty. When a saint sees God in that divine almighty form, like Vishnu, he experiences the blissfulness of God's divine beauty. So God is blissful, God is beautiful, God is kind. All of these virtues are now active. They were there in formless God, but they're inactive. And he has an abode, the divine dimension we call his divine abode. Na tad bhasayate suryo na shashanko na pavaka yad gatva na nivartante tad dham paramam mama Gita. That abode, that divine abode, is also omnipresent, but beyond the material existence. And that divine abode is merely the expansion of God's own self. He himself has expanded into the form of his divine abode. That is also difficult to understand. God is in his divine abode, but he also is his divine abode. Don't try to imagine it. And the souls who enter over there, who attain the almighty form of God, they enter into his divine abode, so it means they've entered into God. But while they're there in his divine abode, they can see God. So at the same time they're in God, and at the same time they're seeing God? Yes. It's another miracle of God's divine power, Yogamaya, which is beyond material understanding. So these are the things we take on faith now, because those great